Welcome to Golden Blue Dude, everybody, home of the college football fan. And don't forget, you can send gear to represent your team for the background of Golden Blue Dude forever. Just send gear to P.O. Box 360, Liberty, South Carolina 29657. Let's get to the next video. You hear it from everybody, and it is a wise saying. People that don't learn from their mistakes are doomed to repeat their mistakes. And I did make a major mistake after Oklahoma and Texas announced that they were going to the SEC. I had strong inside sources telling me this, and I heard everybody else talking about this, that West Virginia and Notre Dame were in fact 100% going to join the ACC. I made that a prediction, and what happened? It didn't happen. So what have I done since then? I haven't made ironclad predictions like that ever since, because that one is still biting me in the rear end as we speak right now. I'm sure I'll see it in the comments section just because I reminded everybody. So most of my videos, in fact all of my videos since then, has just been speculation, and I'm upfront about it. This is for entertainment, it's speculation. I admit it. I am obsessed with conference realignment. I like to look at every scenario, every speculation, and try to figure out what could happen next. And right now, I do believe that the conference that's in the biggest trouble is the ACC. There for a minute, I thought it was the Pac-12 because I was hearing that negotiations were not going well between the Pac-12 and ESPN, and Arizona State was not happy about that, and that they were going to lead the charge for the 3/4 of the Four Corner schools to make the jump over to the Big 12. Well, since then, I've heard that the Pac-12 is locking in a TV deal with ESPN. It's not great, but nobody is leaving. That research money runs in the hundreds of millions of dollars for Pac-12 members. That is what's keeping these teams from leaving. So it looks like the Pac-12 has been stabilized for now. Also, the Big 12, whenever Oklahoma and Texas left, everybody was predicting that that was it. The Big 12 is done and over with. They cannot survive that. They went out and got BYU, Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston. No, that does not make up for the losses of Oklahoma and Texas, but it does soften the blow a little bit, and it does seem like the Big 12 is stabilized for now as well. So now all eyes are on the ACC. And listen, Tony Altimore, he's my good friend. He disagrees with me on this particular subject. A lot of people think that there is no way out of those granted rights, that they're ironclad. Actually, there's a couple of ways, not just one, a couple of ways. The first way is shelling out $500 million. That's not going to happen. Nobody's going to shell out $500 million to get out of that granted rights. But it is a way to get out of it. The second way is for a majority vote. 8 teams to be exact, to vote to dissolve the granted rights, and then the teams in the ACC could go pretty much wherever they want. That is part of the deal. Remember, this deal is really, really bad. So I think it was smart that these ACC schools asked for an out just in case, because the granted rights have them locked in until 2036. The payout is not good at all. I'm not understanding why these teams signed this in the first place. Somebody explain. Maybe there's an actual reason for that, and I just don't know, because it just doesn't make sense. They're getting like $20-some million per team per year for this TV deal with ESPN. That is bad. That is terrible, to be honest with you. But I guess they were smart enough to say, hey, we at least need an out, because this is not a good TV deal. Then why did you sign it in the first place is my biggest question. So we do have something looming large over the ACC as far as the possibility of 8 teams voting to dissolve the ACC. And I've done many, many videos on where I think certain teams would go. I've changed my mind on certain teams. Of course, the first list that we heard from ESPN was North Carolina, Clemson, Florida State, and Virginia going to the SEC. I think the only team likely out of that bunch to actually go to the SEC would be Clemson. Florida State is trying to get their AAU status. There is bad blood between Florida State and the SEC. I've already done a video on that. I think the Big Ten also wants North Carolina. So I think the Big Ten could get North Carolina, Duke, Florida State, maybe a Virginia, maybe a Georgia Tech. So maybe the SEC can get 2 teams off that list, Clemson and Virginia. And then they could fill in those 2 other spots with either Virginia Tech and Miami, Virginia Tech and NC State, or NC State and Miami. So the SEC would have options, even if they could only grab Clemson and Virginia from their original list. I think that would be the smartest move by the Big Ten. Go after North Carolina, go after Duke, go after Georgia Tech, and go after Florida State. That stretches you all the way to the state of Florida, but it doesn't isolate Florida State. You have other Southern teams coming with them. So my new groups are this. For the Big Ten, I think they're going to grab North Carolina, Duke, Florida State, and Georgia Tech. I think that would be the smart grouping for the Big Ten. I think the SEC will get Clemson, Virginia, NC State, and the Miami Hurricanes. They do want that Florida market, and Miami is the next strongest brand if you're not going to get Florida State. Sorry, Virginia Tech, but it looks like you might be in the group of teams going to the Big 12. So my group of teams going to the Big 12 revised list would be Syracuse, Pitt, Louisville, and Virginia Tech, which would be the dream list for West Virginia fans. Hey, if we're not leaving the Big 12, then hopefully the Big 12 can strengthen its eastern side and bring in those rivalries and lock in the Backyard Brawl, the Black Diamond Trophy rivalry, and West Virginia-Louisville. That is an amazing set of rivalries. Don't forget about West Virginia-Syracuse. They have had some great games in the past as well. In fact, I believe that Syracuse beat West Virginia in the last year that West Virginia was in the Big East. I think that's how it went. So is it all doom and gloom for the ACC? Is there anything the ACC can do? Well, listen, if the ACC was going to do something, the best timing would have been whenever Texas and Oklahoma left the Big 12 for the SEC or announced that they were leaving to go to the SEC. That was the window right there. And the ACC was talking to West Virginia, but for whatever reasons, those talks fell apart. I don't know if it was the ACC cutting those talks off. I don't know if it was West Virginia cutting those talks off. Because they could have grabbed West Virginia out of the Big 12 without any penalty after 2025. Or less of a penalty, I should say. So it just depends on if West Virginia has signed the new grant of rights, they could still grab West Virginia at a small price. But West Virginia isn't enough. As much as I love West Virginia, and as much as I think West Virginia does bring value to the ACC, West Virginia isn't enough. They would need other teams besides West Virginia to help renegotiate that TV deal and try to make the ACC last longer. And also, don't forget about that idea that I've had. If I was the ACC commissioner, I would be renegotiating that grant of rights deal to where I'd be asking for more money, but shorten it. That way you could appease both sides. Hey, we want more money because I think these teams are worth more money. But at the same time, let's shorten this to 2030, 2031. That way the teams you want in the SEC, you're guaranteed to get them sooner than 2036. You're not having to rely on those 8 teams voting to dissolve the grant of rights. That's just me. I would do that if I was the ACC commissioner. They probably won't do that. So the ACC would need teams like West Virginia, maybe an Oklahoma State, maybe a Memphis, and maybe try to pull UConn into the ACC. UConn has a great basketball brand. It would definitely strengthen the ACC in basketball. And UConn has shown that they can have success in football when they were in the Big East. It would make sense geographically as well. But you're going to have several teams in order to have any type of negotiating power to up that TV deal. The question is, has all or any of the teams signed that new grant of rights? If they have, then the ACC is screwed. It's not happening, and you're just waiting to dissolve and go away, whether you last till 2036 or not. So this is post-production Golden Blued, and I saw a comment in one of the comment section that maybe do some digging. It really gives the ACC a glimmer of hope. This is from our good friend Tar Heel. Anyways, here's what he had to say. It's been noted that the new Big 12 deal has not been officially announced, which suggests GOR, grant of rights, holdouts, meaning there could be holdouts for people signing the grant of rights. I do wonder if the deal has a de-escalation clause if there is no GOR, as that would be the smart thing to do. Has the reported Pac deal been officially announced? No, the Pac-12 deal hasn't been officially announced. That's why I'm not holding my breath for the Pac-12. But I dug into it, and yeah, there could be potentially some holdouts as far as the new Big 12 grant of rights. So the ACC might have a glimmer of hope. They might have a window to where they could attract some teams from the Big 12 to the ACC if those teams do not want to sign that new grant of rights. And the thing that really interests me is, what if a few of the new teams, like Cincinnati, UCF, maybe even Houston, flip over to the ACC if they haven't signed the grant of rights? We could see our first quick flip as far as a group of 5 teams signing with the Power 5 conference and then choosing to go with another Power 5 conference because they don't sign the grant of rights of the first Power 5 conference. Does the ACC have a chance of getting a Cincinnati, UCF along with West Virginia? Maybe Oklahoma State hasn't signed the new grant of rights. That would be enough to give the ACC some negotiating power to bump that revenue up just a little bit. Even if it's not massive, at least get it into mid or upper 30 millions, which would be competitive with the Big 12 and could entice those teams over to the ACC. So this would be a bittersweet moment for West Virginia fans, because West Virginia fans, including myself, think that West Virginia should have been in the ACC long ago. But for whatever reason, the ACC has turned its nose up on West Virginia time and time again. Even the inception of the ACC, West Virginia was up to be a founding member of the ACC, and West Virginia was turned down. And since then, West Virginia has been turned down multiple times to be invited as a new member of the ACC. So it would be bittersweet because we do think West Virginia should be in the ACC for the longest time. And now West Virginia fans might be sitting back and watching the total destruction of the ACC. Is there any hope for the ACC to survive? Or is it just a matter of time? Y'all let me know in the comment section. Number one, do you think the ACC still has hope? If so, what are your ideas? How does the ACC survive? Number two, if it's just a matter of time and the ACC is done and over with, where do you have each team in the ACC going? That's all I got for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.